go. So, thanks y'all for coming out. I am going to introduce everyone on the panel. Before doing that, some just like very brief accessibility notes for the folks in the audience. There are bathrooms down the hallway. To the right, there's a multi-gender bathroom. There's also a women's bathroom. I don't know where the man's bathroom is.
There's a sign for it.
Oh, okay. So it's on the other side of the hall.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need to use the bathroom, of course, feel free. This is obviously being recorded and will be posted on the Apogee social media. And as well, is there anything else I need to mention?
Also water.
Oh, there's also water,
snacks,
etc. are all back there. So, yeah, I guess I'd just like to just take a moment to ask every one of our. I'm Zefyr Lisowski. I'm a editor at Apogee Journal, just putting on this event. I'm excited to be and co-moderating this. Yeung, who's on the fiction team. Is there anything else you would say about yourself?
And newly first title of news editor, Apogee Journal.
Well, that's true. That's all true. So I just want to give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. Just give your name, any identifying information you want to give, and just to talk for a moment about how you describe your own work in terms of practice, priorities, or things, ethics. What excites you most about it?
Sure. I'm Andrés, Cerpa. Hi, everybody. How's it going? In terms of sort of like what excites me most about poetry, is I think it's like the ability to slow down time. And I think that's important because it allows a deeper sense of attention to sort of like cause and effect relationships. Now, I'm not saying that my poems necessarily always have a cause and effect relationship, but there is like beginnings of being able to see some sort of interconnectedness. It's wild, kind of like instinctual like, that we have. So that ability to slow down time or even maybe like stop time, it's not possible. While at the same time, like working is what excites me most.
Hi, I'm Cyrée Johnson, and I am excited about poetry because sometimes it can use language to make people experience things they wouldn't otherwise. So I'm a formalist, and I think of form as when Black poets specifically, or maybe just myself, work in inherited traditional forms, I feel like it's the kind of appropriation that I can get behind. Like, of course, when people force-fed those traditional forms, but I think that in the discourse of in cultural appropriation, like white people get to have like 100% of the fun and like none of the backlash. And so, like, what does it mean to take the best things from a white culture and apply them to a Black lens? What can form teach us about restriction and lack? What can it teach you about not being able to move as freely as you otherwise would like to? And also, like, I think that for me, using traditional forms, particularly the Crown of Sonnets, but many other forms as well, really just like questions, like even the thing that white people felt like they did that was best for poetry, like the sonnet, like it's actually kind of boring and like needs to be revised, and like only Black people, I think, like can do that. And so like thinking about what that means for form and like what the perceived messiness or freedom of Black culture can add to some of these increasingly stuffy forms, and like doing what Black people have done always, which is like taking whatever white people saw fit to give us and making it into something that we can actually use
I'm Adjua, Gargi, and Nzinga Greaves. I don't always identify as a poet, but I'm trying it out. I definitely identify primarily as an artist and increasingly as a writer. And through that, because I love writing and thinking with poets the most of the artists that I've met in New York City, it feels kind of best in my social and intellectual engagement. The poets that I know are the most intellectually adventurous and the most kind of casually radical. And that's what I've always wanted from the art world, and that's what I never, ever, ever found anywhere else. I found it pretty closely. I got to poetry because of an engagement with performance art in northern Brooklyn, but even that didn't have the craft thing that I wanted. It had other craft things that I could have gotten to, but where I really wanted to be was on the page, inside of sentences, you know, and that's where the magic and electricity of this work is for me. It doesn't always feel like my practice is generating poems, but it's always, no matter what I'm doing, I do feel the kind of poet mind, like looking for the things that haven't been described or have been like lazily described, and really finding and taking the time, as you said, Andrés, like to just like take the time to find like the true or the truer or the currently more accurate language for them to open up what's there. And like you said, Cyrée, I also like the appropriation is the reappropriation is the most fun. It's the most fun. We were joking about the intense aesthetic in this room, and I went to a very good school on the Upper East Side that looked a lot like this, and it was profoundly dramatic. And in all of my kind of adult, creative, personal work, kind of reflecting on that and moving forward from that, I really feel a kind of like joy in taking like this vibe and applying it to what this has no idea about.
Thank you for all of those. And just in the interest of introducing each other as well, are there any, before we move on to the next question, are there any pieces of y'all's work reading? Any poems that you'd like to open the space with? Whoever wants to go first.
Sure.
This is just a...
Yeah.
Throwing it out there.
I'll read a shorter piece. I forget what I called it. I think it's something like Of Humans and Monstering, something like that. What violence to interbeing is the human classification? Where in how we love flora, beast, animal, story, self? Where within our flights from chaos rise the scaffolds of our monstering? Does thriving demand predation? Can atemporal language return us to the wood? Which humans are animals? Who is endangered by the wild? Were we ever able to ask nature for consent? At what cost do we forge safety from the void?
So this is a poem that I wrote about my mentor and the Adjua. Is there anything picked up?
A little closer to home.
Yeah, it's called Magenta, and it has a running title, so sometimes it's weird when I read it. Is this? As I'm saying. Magenta, the kind my homie Leah calls screaming vulva, a sparkler through gray hair with glint of mercury. Quickly become elders in the city, smears our fingers like new murder. They're my mentor with Sinti Roma's bleeding tarot. When I was a kid, they wrote FemSharp Manifesto. I lived a life with pink books and gem mischief. That zine is the zine that I mean when I mean the zine. It was a roll call for femicides, pumped a saline shot of sadness, but at least there was fucking to look forward to. I wanted to grow up and then be them and then be their friend forever. Wash all their dishes, eat drying pizza out the box. So I filled 3 bags and moved to Oakland. It was blank verse for 10 months and fucking. I slept on Anna's couch as ever and wrote for Weed magazines. Hot-handed roof gardens blush pink as lips. The other ocean coughed out boys with lips and lisps. Prince punctuated all my trysts. I dated a cop for about 6 months, a future flush with killer's gear. He won't tell you about the rapes, but he paints and sculpts them on his face where eyebrows once were. And should it be? Alas, this poem can't reinstall the skin or grow his eyebrows back again. His fetid hide has ceased to be for all of our eternities, and for this, only impotence. A poem mauve with fizzy goiter, flaccid as Pacific 6 spray speed. A poem to coil you in fistula of yarn and stars. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll read this poem. It's called First Song. A fear of the home is a fear of the future, and I am afraid. In the dark heirloom of the earth, I was nourished and emerged. I questioned God. The ugly gossamer of my country settles in dust. As we walk, the horizon is hauled away, the star horses. I hold the secret pain, my only child, and will be dark heirloom of this earth.
Poem. So moving on to the next question. I'm Crystal, once again. We did pronounce earlier, but not she, her. So this question's for Adjua. On your work as an anthroponist, and you could actually go on what it specifically is, where you investigate human relationships to plants, a sort of user-use relationship that is analogous to oppressor-oppressed. What is being recuperated in that work? And what is this gesture as a poetic practice, especially because of its political implication and a power to rewrite narratives? Would you consider it counter-anthropological work, specifically in a sense where a Lebanese Australian academic, Hassan Haj, he argues that the history of anthropological knowledge is the history of white colonial knowledge of non-white cultures. It is white knowledge infused with colonial desire, but is also a particular kind of disciplinary knowledge infused with the desire to experience, later on, and develop knowledge of those of being other than our own. So,
I want to be very clear that this question is why I said yes to this panel. Like, that's a sick question. So I studied cultural anthropology in undergrad, actually, and later found out that often people who are currently studying anthropology or interested in it are outsiders in some way. Because I used to work at a bookstore. David Graeber, who wrote Jet, a history, came to talk, and he studied cultural anthropology, and we were talking afterwards, and he was the one who, when I shared that was also my educational background, he was like, well, that makes sense because of these like outsider things that I had been talking to him about. So I think it's really interesting to think about the colonial desire that like pervasive. I don't want to say that there's one way that that we are encouraged to be. I think there are many ways, but I think that the lens that I'm often wariest of in myself, being brought up in like adjacent to privilege, engaged with certain amounts of privilege, and then under the heel of everybody else's privilege in the United States over the past 40 years has been like a real. I really have to watch within myself the desire to conquer in terms of giving myself a sense of safety, because I know better. I've known better my entire life, and yet that's the model of success that I've seen up close the most. And so, what I work on what my work is for is to try to get ahead of where I feel our species is in terms of our relationship to other forms of life. And this clarity kind of came as the police murders were as the reality of the murderous police state was coming into crisper and crisper focus to myself and the white middle class peers that I have. So like 2015, 2016, 2015 especially, and kind of the fallout in 2016 and a real like psychological restructuring. In 2015, 2016, I found that I really could not continue to have these like remedial conversations with my white friends about the value of all life. Like I couldn't bear it. It was unbearable. And what the shape my work took was, I guess, like, okay, so I didn't realize where the racism was latent in people who think that in white people that think that they're doing the right thing. I didn't realize like how little black life or not white life was regarded, and I didn't realize the subtleties of that until I saw people confused about. Until I saw that some people thought that it was a complicated issue that police were murdering people in the street. Like I didn't realize that anybody would think that was complicated. So I found I wasn't able to have those conversations, or I wasn't willing to have those conversations. And then I also realized like there's it was like I have to talk about this, but I can't talk directly about it. And I can see within myself a place that a parallel kind of user-abused relationship is untended to. and not in alignment with the rest of my being, which I think is what many of my white friends were finding as they were confronting this murderous police state that they were benefiting from. They didn't realize that they had existential reliance on injustices being the way they are. So, so let them to their work, focused on what I needed to do. And what I found, one of the main things that I needed to do was look to my relationship to the plant life that I brought into my home, and think about how those beings that are essential to human happiness, survival, and wayfinding, how those beings that are silent, ubiquitous, slow-moving, and unknowable in many ways, how are those beings regarded by the overarching culture? I think at the time I was looking how do humans think about plants, but now having done this work for a number of years, I realized that more indigenous and more brown groups of people are less confused about the value of plants, and so it's really where inside me is the where has whiteness lodged itself inside me, and just flushing that out, and where I can do the most work in terms of that flushing is to look at my own relationship to the plants that I bring into my home, the plants that I interact with casually or actively in my surroundings, and to encourage other people to do the same. And many people don't need to do this work; they're already doing it. But many more people that I directly interact with every day really do. So that's all to say that my writing is anthropological in that I'm terrified of humans and what we refuse to see inside of ourselves, and I'm terrified of the ways that the white supremacist culture that I've been raised in, where it wants to hide within me and not be exercised. And so I find that looking at my relationship to plant life is a really direct, pleasurable way to get at that. And it's also, in addition to studying cultural anthropology, I came to undergrad wanting to be a biological scientist. I didn't end up wanting to do the kind of the work that they were presenting was really unappealing, but that scientific interest in the natural world is really real for me. So botany is another way to get at that.
And a small follow-up too.
Please.
You've also chosen to rename some of the plants as well. I've read give certain species of plant the name Shaquille. And in renaming that, you've done away with the more Latin-based names. Can you speak a little bit on what does that incorporate?
Sure. So that specifically, Shaquille was a shamrock plant that I bought at Whole Foods in winter of 2015 or spring of 2015. I wasn't able to keep it alive; it died in my care. But in the act of bringing that plant into my home, I named it to distinguish it, right? Because it's in the same way that it would surprise very few people to name a dog or a cat But most people don't name their plants because they don't have faces and they can't relate to, or they can't/won't relate to them as individuals. So the naming is not that I'm trying to superimpose a different name on the Latin structure. Like, I think the Latin structure, so far as I can tell, is super useful. Or it's useful to, in the way that it wants to be. But I name my plants after individual Black people or traditionally Black names because I think that, it's too reductive, and it's also as reductive as I want it to be, but I think that all plants are Black people. I think that that's the connection that's like the meditation that I work on. Yeah.
So interesting, and I feel like hearing you say that, I really I'm struggling with it because I feel like the relationship of humans, even like humans who are stripped of humanity, right? Black people, even though all humans are animals, Black people are who are forced to be animals, so that White people can be. And it is like a fundamental. And that is just like a fundamental thing, at least in my own estimation, about what race means in the United States, is that like Black people, like there must be a bottom, so we know what whiteness means, and then we can understand what other racialized categories can mean against the abject darkness of whiteness and Blackness, which is why we do not have this. But even so, like the relationship of all humans, particularly Americans, to like animal life and plant life is colonial, and does already change their names. And I think about how enslavement, even when, my name is obviously Cyrée with an accent on the first E, so I know there did make it up. I was born in 1989, right? So I have one of those crops of Black names where it's just it's made up, you know what I mean? It's not like in the 70s where people were like Swahili. It's not, in the 80s when people had Muslim names, it is specifically and particularly made as, I guess, in a kind of hopelessness, where it's just not only will I never know where folks are from on the continent, not only can I not go back, not only is the idea of returning to a homeland colonial and fraught, there's just all we can do is make what's here, and then also as a hoodoo practitioner, which is also the conglomerate of magical application system of magical knowledge that was created here, right? It was super essential that there were folk names for roots that would be used, but many times those will have three names. Even now, I go to, I know this is being recorded, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I definitely go to a cultural center, Fulton Cultural Center, to get most of my root working supplies. But sometimes I'll take my ass to Catholic just because it's I'm also gay, so it's just I need to be gay sometimes in the place where I'm getting my cultural and spiritual practice. But then it's distinctly for white people, and so I walked in one day and I was I need some Little John to chew, right? I have, some porn stuff coming up, I need some Little John to chew. And they looked at me oh, I need Little John to chew. Looked it up, and they had it under the name Galangal. Galangal. And it's that's so interesting, yes. But it's it takes you nothing to put both of those on there. You know what I mean? It takes nothing to do that little bit of effort. But at the same time, I also know that I'll never know what a plant calls itself. You know what I mean? In the same way that white people will never truly understand how to pronounce my name, even if I make a mnemonic device. And so I should even though my plants are absolutely named, hearing you say that, I wonder how do we deal with even in a larger framework? I've been struck in the last couple of years, thinking about the children in cages narratives. Where it's just Black children constantly in cages. Juvenile detention centers is overflowing. Black slaves is here in the United States. Every damn day. America loves putting children in cages and separating them from their parents. It is literally what America is founded upon. And so thinking about the ways that a misunderstanding for myself that I have more power than plants because capitalism has empowered me over plants. And I think that when we cannot locate where the solidarity comes from, it's hard to tell whether or not we're doing something in solidarity, or if we're doing something because it makes us feel better, or we're doing something because it alleviates the guilt. It's just it's so complicated, I appreciate any attempt to try to think that through, as I know that Shaquille probably appreciated it as well, you know what I mean? But like, I just would hate for the plants to like speak, and it's like that's essentially like calling me Toby, you know? Like it's just like it hurts. It hurts to like think that, but but that's also brilliant. But
Absolutely. That's there's the line with the portion where I talk about names, like it was just specifically. I don't know. Like I don't know if this is. I don't know if this is the right gesture. But it's I don't know that. I don't know. And that question of like, I don't know if it's the right one. And it feels important simultaneously to call the plague something and also to be like, I don't know, like this is a tool that I have. I have all the wrong tools anyway. You know, or maybe I have all the wrong tools. But I think the thing that you said something about not knowing like where the solidarity is rooted, something like that, which I love that. I love that. That's so clearly my concern and my inability to be certain of that at this point. But I think with increased stillness and quiet and like retreating from the human world, whenever I'm able to do that, something else does feel like it starts to come in. So always kind of working towards that. I would love to keep talking to you about names and naming in general. Yeah.
You weren't about to say anything, right? I want to make sure I wasn't stealing the microphone from you. Thank you, though. I mean, oh my God, thank you for that. And also, since I didn't get to say it, thank you to everyone for the poems that opened up the space. All of them are incredible, important, etc. I think speaking of naming, I think that segues nicely into something else that I've been wondering about. The name of this event is Instrument Worldwide, thinking about all of those as schemas for understanding our work, understanding subjectivity, interconnectivity, intersubjectivity, etc. And I was wondering about like the poem as an instrument, the instrument as a thing that produces sound, the voice as an instrument as well. And I'm wondering, what's your relationship to the voices in your poems, right? Do other voices enter? How do they enter? Are they invited? What do you do with them in that space? Anyone, feel free to answer that first.
I feel like there are quite a few voices that are coming into my poems. They've been good to me as of late. Sometimes they're not so good to me. So I'm going to run on that quote. But I think that when I conceptualize what's happening in like individual words and lines, I've been seeing it more and more like it's filled with almost like trap doors. And inside of like those phrases or words, like there becomes like this whole other system that I've like received from the world, or I've learned from the world, but particularly that I've learned from poetry, because poetry is the thing that's like given me deeper access to my own humanity. And I think that in part because it is, or because I've done a lot of my, it's given me deeper access to my own humanity, and it gives me sort of like a place where I can seriously contemplate things. And the voice is quiet to me, in a certain sense. That it's a conversation, but a conversation that can move in a lot of different directions. And that idea of like trapdoors, what's hidden inside the phrase, what can I enter and see? I feel those other voices there. So maybe like I had my poems have roommates or something like that. But the importance of it becoming an instrument and voicing it out loud, at least for me, is that, I mean, the world is so filled with empty speech. And if we can move towards sort of looking underneath the words that we use and see sort of like the system that's happening that gives that thing meaning, then that's helpful. And being able to bring that voice into a space and have that used face to face with other people, I think it hopefully generates a momentum where that becomes more and more important, at least to those people that we're interacting with.
I feel like I have to answer that question separately. There's a way that there's like a physical way that I like to feel, and that's where I'm hearing the voices from like deep inside myself. And I think it's because, or no, not I think it's because, one of the things that I believe that is happening is that it's when I've like literally fed myself well, especially when I've fed myself like a lot of water and plant matter only, like especially in those zones, my internal organs are just like vibrating at in this really beautiful wavelength, and everything internal is different. And so it's, one of the things is that I'm thinking differently, but I'm also hearing those thoughts differently, and it feels much bigger than that. It also feels like I'm able to receive different wavelengths. And I find that in my particular life setup, I find it hard to achieve that lately. It was much easier when I was freelancing, but I have a day job now, and it's really hard. But I'm trying. But one of the sources of that, or what I hope I'm hearing, is less my own voice and more other communication. I feel much more like an antenna than something generating when I'm in that mode. So that's the voice thing, and maybe that does segue into the instrument conversation. I hadn't actually made that connection for myself, but it's. But what I kept thinking when I read that question about the instrument, it's like I feel that I need to become a particular kind of instrument in order to generate the poem, which is another kind of instrument, which will then, upon rereading and getting to, be with that poem as its author, as its steward, like it then continues to tune me, and then I see the effects, like, when we're lucky, I see the effects of the instrument that my instrument has created on other people, and you get to see the like kind of waves of influence. Also, too rare in my life right now, but as I'm building more of a life of the mind, like that's happening more and more. But I love that question.
Thanks, y'all. Those were going to be sitting with this whole panel so far for a long time. I'm glad that y'all all saw fit to be here and other preamble type things, but all true. I feel like as a trans poet, specifically a trans poet, I really struggle with the idea of voice. And you know what? Actually, I'll say as a Black trans poet. Because especially when I started doing, so I was a child public speaker in the New Jersey Workers Program. Then I did poetry out loud as a teen. And then I was just away from any other kind of art. You know what I mean? I'm a first generation college grad from a small town in New Jersey. And, there just wasn't, not only was there not an idea of what I should be, no one ever was like, be a lawyer, be a doctor. No one ever really discussed professions with me. The only thing that I knew was that art was not a valid choice. And that, I should definitely not put any more stock in that. So, for a really long time, I struggled with whether or not I should continue writing, or if that was just for people with trust funds. And although I never stopped writing, I did stop sharing it with people. And so, as an adult, I returned to the practice, and people started. I had an opportunity very early on to speak at the Trans Health Conference, and I realized in that moment, it's just I struggled so much internally, where if I didn't address certain things, if I don't talk about transition, or if I'm not someone who talks about my body, or, if I feel discomfort, if I'm gay, and not producing this heterosexual transgender narrative, am I still valuable? Am I still speaking in the right voice? Am I still, should, other trans people still read my poetry? And so, finally, I, cobbled together this book, Slingshot, which I'm going to show you the cover of, because I know this is being recorded. And I hope that you'll buy it on September 17th, because I've worked very hard for 5 years, and it's here now. I'm very happy for it. But when I was making it, I don't think of myself as a lyric poet. I feel some people's poetry is definitely an instrument. I think that mine is a tool. And I had to just make my peace with not feeling particularly talented in certain ways, or not feeling the best in certain ways, or whatever imposter syndrome I will likely continue to feel. I just have to make my peace with it. So part of that wasn't just about free verse lyricism. It's just not something that I'm particularly interested in. And so the core Slingshot is about a 43-page poem told in 2 voices. One in the voice of a trans adult who is a really terrible activist. His whole deal is that he's very bad at activism. And his mother, who is an exotic dancer who gets caught up in a strip club raid. And so it alternates between their points of view, which are definitely both points, they are a splitting or a shattering of my own point of view, or 2 aspects of myself. And in earlier editions of the work, as I was working through the work, it was, because it's an anti-false assisted book, it very much was looking in a more voyeuristic way about the outcomes of a strip club raid, particularly incarceration, or what that looks like in a city. And I had I write with a muse, and or have written with a muse for some time, and I talked over the book a lot with him for a long time. And at a certain point, even though he's never read the book, he was just I think that it's not right for you to write about incarceration in this way. And I had to really sit with it, and the book really changed. You know what I mean? I think that I struggled with what to represent, and balancing reality, that if you omit it, it does not feel as though you've completed your entire story. But then there's a question of who and how and why and when, and it's just there's no fucking easy answers. You know what I mean? And I feel it really shattered it really rattled me to think about what can we write at all. You know what I mean? I've never experienced enslavement. Can I write about enslaved ancestors? And not can I, but in what ways will it always be incomplete? In what ways will I always need to acknowledge the incompleteness, the complicity, the reductiveness of writing about the ancestors? You know what I mean? Love, hagiography, people, I feel like, I wonder what happened, and like, of course, like, I'm on Twitter, but like, I don't understand why like there is so much conflict, and I'm sure we'll get to that in some of the later questions. But I think that ultimately, I worry that readers are becoming less willing to engage with things that turn out negatively, and things that do not yield some sort of positive social outcome, like that are just fucking bad and wrong. And that, like, if you are an oppressed person who chooses to be like, hey, this shit's bad and wrong, and it might not get better, and like I'm just gonna have to rub your nose in it, you know? Like, I feel like you don't get as far as being like, everything's terrible and tomorrow it'll be okay because we're climbing the mountain in a rainbow, and you're wearing a fanny pack, and what a good fanny pack, and then I ate some watermelon, you know? Like, it's just like, I can't give you joy all the time. Like, my joy is actually very expensive, and like, I don't even get it all the time, so like, how can I possibly produce it for you? And so like, all I can do is write about like what's actually going on and the consequences of what happen. But even within then, like that, I'm like situated in like newly in like the trans 1%, and like just finished across the street at Columbia for an MFA, my second master's. You know what I mean? And part of the reason why it was important to write about it was that like as a queer disabled person, as a trans person, as a a Black person, like I definitely do experience as you said earlier, like. A lot of oppression in my day-to-day life, like serious, severe, violent oppression, and also just like harassment and shit like that, like on the street, like violence and shit. But like at the same time, like I, was taught like that some of it, in general, kind of relationship with my family that I feel like is now kind of unethical. You know what I mean? Like my family, by and large, are not professionals. I do not come from a professional class family. I'm the only person in my family with a full-time job. And so thinking about how I actually have more vested power than most of my family, even though they do not share my identities, and like, what does that mean? Like, what's my responsibility to others who like may not speak the same like kind of language about queerness or transness, even though I do not personally identify as queer, such as gay, but like in the overarching term, like what responsibility do I have to like folks who do not have the advantages that I have, even if I have more oppressed identities, you know what I mean? It's just like complicated and unresolvable. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, riffing off of that, Cyrée, I kind of want you to talk a little bit about your work as a librarian as well.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But a sort of preamble to that is that I've been thinking about a poem as a piece of artifact, and that it is an act of intention, attention, and encapsulation. And I know that earlier, Andrés, you had said that poetry for you slows down time. And I'm thinking along the lines of an artifact and how Nina Alexander had written in a poem previously titled Question of Time. She writes that we have poetry so that we don't die of history. And Cyrée, in all of your work, and how you just kind of jump across the page in terms of a poem with like sort of exuberance, and even how you compose yourself right now. With emphatic leaps and caps and spacing, and engages readers in both the visual, in terms of how you look at the paper, and also auditory and how you perform poetry. So I wanted to ask, how do you survive across the page? And this is open to both Andrés and Adjua. How do you survive across the page, and what do you archive through your work as a librarian? And is yours an act of living in a page world? And to all of you, what do you hope to save in your poetry?
Yeah, humanists really love the archive right now, and I feel so complicated about it as a librarian. I feel so complicated. Just because, like, a lot of the archiving work, like, it's collecting work, that, like, community archiving work is, like, very often collecting work, and it's not preservation work. And so, like, I think about, like, what do we preserve? And, like, when I knew that I was writing a fossa book, like, specifically a fossa book, as someone who has been severely harmed by the criminalization of sex work, just on TV. I was like, oh shit, like that dates my book in a particular way, like it bookends it in really particular ways that I feared. And when I started thinking about like, but what does it preserve? Like, how does it preserve a moment in time where like some of the most violent legislation against sex workers, like shutting down bank accounts and, you know, like making, encouraging people on Tinder to report people they think might be tricking on Tinder, you know, like, or Grindr, right? Like, and preventing sex workers and people with experience in the sex trade from entering these like normal parts of everyday life, right? And I wonder, like, who else, you know, like, I want to join with whoever else is also preserving it, right? And so, like, thinking about how our poetry can, like, preserve something happens, especially when you cannot provide tangible receipts. Like, where it's like, I actually can't tell you in detail, like, all the things that, like, I've done that led to this book. Like, I like, just can't, like, legally, socially, like, in terms of stigma, I can't. But what I can do is, like, write some poems, and I can be like, maybe this is me, maybe this is not me, maybe this is somebody I know, maybe this is someone I've never met. Like, maybe, you know, maybe I have a right to write it, maybe I don't. Like, you'll, like, actually never know, but it, like, preserves that, like, this was happening in a way that's less legally liable. And so I think that that's important. I think that, you know, librarianship is just, like, I'm so thankful for librarianship because I have systemic lupus. And so if I didn't have a vocation that like allowed me to have insurance, like I just couldn't survive. Like, and it is only through librarianship that I can be a poet because it is just so important for me to be able to afford medication and like be able to like care for and keep my body in ways that are allowed to be alive because my prognosis was 25 and I turned 30 this year. So you know, like it was not a promise. It was not a given. And so, yeah, I think that surviving across the page, I think a lot of times as a Black person, and probably other things are going into this too, people talk to me like I write poetry in the body. You know what I mean? Like that I'm like, or that if I don't, like that I'm somehow like neglecting like some spiritual important thing when it's just like I don't live in my body enough to write about it. You know, like that's just not the way that I live. And it isn't the way that I've been able to live so far in my life. So, and like, that's just fact. So, and also I'm in pain all the time, you know what I mean? So like, you know, even if you like take away like the dysphoria or the anxiety, you know, like, and the various mental health issues, you know, just like all of those things taken away, like there's still just constant widespread pain, you know? So like, thinking about surviving across the page, like making space for my internal life, but also, like, I think, like, again, just, like, making peace with, like, being a minor, being not great, you know, like, being, like, not the kind of poetry that, like, people want to accept into their fancy magazine, you know, like, just, like, making peace with it. Like, I feel like once I, like, recognize that, like, I literally talk about sex far too much for most major journals to be publishing me, like, I just did what I fucking wanted, and I haven't stopped, you know, like, once I was like, okay, like, I am someone who just, like, loves writing about sex, and loves writing about sucking dick, throwing neck, and, like, that's what the poems are gonna be, and, like, you know, like, it limits who my audience believes it is. I feel like that's kind of sad, but, like, that's not about me, and so, like, I can't, like, how many poems can one write about zipping up someone's dress? Like, how many poems can one write about a flower? Like, how many? You know, like, you can always put flowers and you can always zip up a dress in a poem, but what is it about? And, like, I think especially coming out of Columbia, like, no, I guess I was going to say no shade, but I guess that's shade. But, like, you know, like, ultimately, like, I feel like I felt very dismissed in my classes. Like, folks felt like I was writing a lesser kind of poetry. But it's just, like, y'all write really boring poetry. Like, your poetry might as well not be there, you know, like, in some cases, like, where it's just, like, it says nothing new. It reveals nothing new about the world. But, okay, go off, you know what I mean? So, I guess that's just me going off some other way.
So, if either of y'all want to add anything to that, I see you covering your mouth. And then you're just thinking. You're thinking. No, it's fine. I wasn't trying to make you self-conscious. I was just like, how do I, you know, attend to y'all, the panelists? Yeah, thank you as well. So on that note, right, I'm really interested in thinking about like what our relationship to like the journal is, right? as this institution, as this structure. Even as like Apogee, right? Who, while we were created, sort of founded as like an alternative, we also hold some keys. We facilitated the emergence of some poetics that, you could have a very larger conversation around. And I'm wondering what the weight of the representation is for all of y'all, both what you can turn as a means of observation in your own work and the pressure of a certain kind of visibility as a writer. As poetry co-editor and audience member Joey DeJesus has said, representational modes of poetics perhaps deny more holistic and heuristic understandings of seeing. And I'm wondering in what ways you assert a representation of yourself, if you assert that. How's that tied to the way that you represent in your poems or represent your poems? How do you see poetry? How do you see your poetry? How do you see in your poetry throughout like the whole body mind, to use the term that you like there, sort of popularized, without just thinking of like what we see with the eyes, right? What are other ways of seeing as well?
My plan, my point in this work is to become a supernatural being. You know, like that's what I want. That's what I want from my time on Earth, and it feels like. Remarkably, it seems very clear that this kind of creative practice is the way to do that. And so, in terms of representation, like I know internally when I'm walking down the street, I know that that's my goal, and I know kind of my progress in the decades that I've been alive. And it gives me great joy when I can see in somebody else's eyes that they can see a flicker of that. If I'm having a day when it's shining, it's not always shining. And so that's kind of where, in my heart, the representation question is. Like, I'm only really accurately being represented if somebody does a double take and they're like, that's a different kind of human being, you know? And, internally, my autobiographical situation it's a mythical narrative because that's the way my mind works, Like my parents are as opposite as could be, and yet so similar. They were born almost on the same street, but have like from that source material you can see the divergence. My parents are also my parents' sun signs are my rising and moon signs. It feels like there are like very clear aspects of my internal narrative that are that I prefer to remember and recall and guide myself through in a myth-making practice. That's how I prefer to be. And one of the things that I grew out of was this education in what was simultaneously an excellent school and also hell, like psychologically hell. And I know that visually, sonically, behaviorally, and like curatorially confuse people in terms of what they're expecting and what they actually receive. But I can't keep track of all of those different things. I just know internally that I only feel represented when I'm on the way to something else other than a human being.
Really love that. Yeah. When I was got questions beforehand, so I had some thoughts, but I part of my presentation of myself. I mean, in my book, I talk a lot about my relationship with my father, who had Parkinson's for a very long time. And yes, there's the autobiographical portion of that, but there's also like the compiling of different moments, compiling of poems and other stories and things like that. But what I'm trying to present is like a more ethereal, maybe, of like sort of a theme, because I feel that's the thing that is muffled most. And then in a sense, not most, it's palpably muffled to me, you know, as I move through the world. And because it is muffled, it's sort of like it's like some like bomb that's gone off inside of me, and that's the thing that I want to show. Right? I guess one of the lines in the first poem of my book, as it ends, is talking about like a soldier's slogged hand hiding a match. Like that, I don't know, somewhere along the line in World War I, I don't know where I got this information, that as you lit a match, you could be killed because someone in a trench across would be able to see you and kill you. Right? So that I have this match, I have something that's like ethereal, that is alive, and I have to hide in order to like move through the world. And ultimately, the presentation of like what's happening inside of my work is I don't want my story to die with a whimper, because I don't want my story to die with a whimper. I don't want my father's story to die with a whimper. And because the world has forced, asked, expected a certain set of behaviors in order to achieve success, to eat, to do these things, I don't want to die in another type of way. And the poetry becomes like ethereal, or like that fire, that thing that is muffled in order to, at various points, to survive.
I think a lot of our representation specifically. I think about representation a lot, just because like the lack of certain kinds of representations made me feel like I did not truly exist before I was like 20, 30. So like I didn't see any representations of myself or people like me. And so I had to write for myself in ways that I didn't even feel like whenever somebody's like, I write for myself, I'm just like always like, that's so cheesy. You know, like it's just like not something that I've like ever, it's never felt totally true when especially when someone like famous says, I write for me. It's like, but like I feel like I write to fill a void in myself. And like one thing I'm struck with every year, right, is how many specifically gay, specifically autistic trans guys kill themselves every year. Just like that very specific number, you know what I mean? Whether it's suicide by cop, like every single year without fail, like 2 or 3 of us kill ourselves. Autistic people are 9 times more likely than the general population to kill ourselves. And so like it's not as surprising. And I think that always really strikes me really strongly. Because it's just so specific that you would almost think that you wouldn't be able to track a pattern, but like actually it happens often enough that you can notice. And so I think that is the only kind of representation I feel like I can even like muster in like a Lose Club sort of way, you know? Like I just think that there needs to be more representations of trans faggotry on the page like now, so that like people can understand the arc of what's been happening and like what will be coming up. Like, so that is really important to me. But I think that, especially in like my narrative poetry and like formalism, or like the forms that I work in, I think that I just want to like consider some shit that I can't get any easy answers to. You know, like I myself am a terrible activist. I'm not good at it at all. Like I've just had to give it up completely, like in later years, because it doesn't bring me joy, and like also I'm not good at it, so it does not bring others joy when I do it. Yeah, it's a lose-lose. So I like stopped, and I think that part of that for me was a real loss. You know what I mean? But I think that part of the reason I wasn't good at activism is because sometimes like I would have to reduce what I thought was positive or negative down to like a good or bad distinction. You know, like this thing is great when we do it, and also like these things are awful, and like I feel like I was encouraged towards really simplistic answers, and also I was encouraged to think of myself as being among the most disempowered when, like as I said earlier, like I just don't feel like that's the case in a lot of different ways for me personally. When like I think that the truth was actually far more complicated, and it was just not something that could be put on a sign or a banner, you know, like that. Like actually, there are like really complex. Like even like thinking about like the way that communities that I've been in like address like queer antagonism, right? When it comes from like folks, like well, like with the one hand we'll be like, we are anti-carceral feminists who feel XYZ way, and then like the moment someone even like has who's never been introduced to a particular language, doesn't use that language, like they're completely ostracized from a space. You know what I mean? Like how, in what way is that anti-carceral? Like in what way is that like anti-punishment? Like when all you have to do to get kicked out of space is like not having having not been in it before, right? And so like really trying to think about the ways that like it is me, like I am the one who is making the mess, like I am the one who is like preserving the negative space, and like, and not in a self-flagellating way, but like in a self-understanding way, you know, like I feel like it helped me understand my parents even like better. Like I feel like it helped me understand the communities I came from, and like the ways that I distanced myself, thinking that I wasn't being Cyrée when I was being Cyrée. You know, like all of those things are the reason that I write, to just like, I feel like it's like the easiest way for me to check myself, and like also to check in with myself, and also like to create a more full picture of the world. You know what I mean? Like so many of the narratives that are regurgitated in the places that I live and the places that I go are deeply reductive. You know, like it's some of the most primary ones. You know, like just very, very reductive, and I wonder what it means. Like, did I do a poem? Is that okay? Okay, so one of the it's so weird thinking about recording, because like I know that no one's seeing me right now, but like I have to keep in mind that people will see me like later. But like I guess I just can't I can't do anything about it. So right, but one of the concepts that I actually have been finding really reductive lately is like the down low, and thinking about like the closet and what the closet means. Like it's just like, what is the difference between being closeted and just being private about your life? You know what I mean? Like especially if like you're already somebody who's like kind of oppressed. So like, do I really need you to like walk outside and like yell at everyone? Like how do you have to be to not be positive, right? So, but then there's also like the issue of like, what do we owe our lovers, right? Like I really just want to ask those questions rather than being like, if you have 12 marginalized identities and this person has 8, like you just need to stop talking completely. I just can't. I can't do that math anymore, but like I think that like thinking really critically about like how we should show up and like what respect looks like in different given situations, and like what we really do owe each other, and like what the world can't exist without us giving each other is something I think about all the time. So this is a poem about that, and it's called Doppelganger. Queer utopians think human beings are perfectible, but we're not. We're just correctable. In an hourly motel, I recall that Kim Adonisio poem about tattoos and ask you how many you have. Although I count 14 every time you doze and add your spit to the mysterious stains on the pillows. But the ink proliferates in twilight sticky gold, is a cover-up one or 2 or 3 tattoos? And how many about your forces appearances? And how many about the appearance of manhood? And how many about being a man with his face buried in pillows? A short black man sliding slick down our impossible. I hate how much I love when you suck my toes, and I despise you for making me beg. That's why I can't know you. That's why I stay perpetually ahead of your judgment. You look just like me when I'm fucking you from behind. I'll suck that shirt cock to the love pops plus 1 extra wop until I figure it out. I don't know God anymore. But let's stay here on our knees and wait for him to come.
Okay, let's just take some. How many working mics do we have at this point? I just want to. This one works. That one works, right? This one. So wait, we only have 1 working mic. Okay, let's. Oh, okay, I can just pass this one down.
Hello?
Oh, there you go.
Now I have 2. I guess I'm going to smush 2 questions into one. Because I think this was skipped earlier. In terms of how writing gets done, Andrés, you said on Twitter in May in reference to your voice recorder. Did you bring it today?
No, I didn't.
Okay. You should have. It would have been cooler if you did. In reference to your voice recorder, you had said change the tool and you get to change the poem. For all of you, what tools do you use in your writing? What are your listening practices? What are you listening when you hear your voice in the machine come back at you? And in what ways do you cultivate or encounter change in your work? And also building on that, while, for others it might be more auditory, more sonic, in terms of how you interact with the page. I would like to believe that there's a sort of trifold relationship happening between poet, pen, and page. So how do you write in these different modes in terms of how space, borders, or margins of a page informs your poem? Do you write digitally on a computer, just straight through, or do you write it in pockets of like notes or an actual page? Yeah.
So I'll go first since I got quoted from Twitter. At various points, I've used a few different technologies, and I've used a few different technologies in different ways to create poems and to edit poems. In reference to that, change the tool, change the poem, I think that first thing, the primary thing that forces me or pushes me in different directions is really just like how much money I'm making and how much I'm not. In all honesty. So writing my first book, I wrote longhand in a large notebook, and I'm like competing with myself like the longest lines possible, right? But I had that freedom, and I had a little bit more time. I was in graduate school, I was after graduate school, I could reach that in the page. But in terms of the recording, what I would do is I would record every poem and every draft and set it on the table, lay down, and just listen to it. And as I listened, I could hear, just sort of instinctually, I would say, where the poem was like not sonically pleasing to me, where it sort of like paused in a certain way that I didn't like, where it was working. And then, as an extension of that, because I see myself as someone who works in book-length projects, I then recorded, once I had all the poems down individually, I recorded every single poem in different sequences and listened to the entirety of my book to see how they then work together and what like resonances and how different sounds sort of like played out across moving through a book. So like I really love to end poems with double L sounds. Like how many times can I do that? I need to like switch that up, right? That might work for the individual poem, but by listening to it all the way straight through, I can hear that in a compressed sort of way, and therefore recognize what's happening inside my own work a little bit better. I've been using the recorder and I had a little bit of trouble reading. I was like reading such an incredible amount for a short period of time that I sort of like needed a break. And I started recording sort of like poems just into a recorder, not writing them down. And now I'm going through the process of trying to figure out how to transfer those poems onto the page. It's hard, but I'll figure it out at a certain point. For my second book, the second half of it, I wrote on a typewriter. And what I did was my process, the tools, the typewriter, I was having a difficult time sort of like finding the second half of the book. Someone had told me that Kierkegaard got a typewriter, and after that technology entered his life, his sentences got shorter. So I was like, you know what, whatever. I'm going to get myself a typewriter off eBay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to type up a poem, put it in a folder, and not look at it. And I'm going to do that for the next 4 months, basically every day. And, you know, at work, I need to use my laptop, so I wasn't able to access those poems like in a free moment where I would like sort of like play around and mess with things. And I didn't let myself read them. So, you know, I just showed up with whatever I had on my mind, and I was free to reuse lines and things like that. So, in part, the typewriter allowed me to only have one copy, and therefore, maybe that sequence that developed, which was like about a 30-page sequence, has different resonances that maybe I would not have put in there if I had access to it sort of like more along the process, in a certain sense. So, I mean, I guess those are some ways that I've used it. Then the phone, too. When I was working a lot, I would secretly write poems on my phone, and a lot of those poems don't have punctuation, things like that. So that helps different sort of like manifestations of how my life circumstances change, and therefore my poems need to change. Right? Or I need to change in order to.
Mostly it's Google Docs and conversation. Like those are my two primary tools in my practice. I don't like having to save things. Right, so I don't like writing something in Word and then like, oh, did I save it? I don't want to think about that. So the digital record takes care of that, and being able to access the work everywhere. Okay, this is not new to anybody, but it feels like my work is like living in a space where it like belongs. If it's digital and I'm able to like access it as it's being created, and it's nimble until it's done, and then I'm so glad to print it out. I'm so glad to kind of like set it in stone there. But I really love the nimbleness of multi-access points for a digital draft. But I also have a real concern about writing in isolation and writing just for myself. And so in an early part of my practice, I started doing this, particularly when I was transitioning from the performance space into a more poetic space. I was doing performances where I would be on Google Docs in my laptop, similar to this setup, but on stage, and sometimes setting up the performance or the reading so that I was writing in front of the audience, projected, like a performance of the act of creation, which I found really thrilling, but also it feels like a little too on the nose, so I couldn't do that much, but like it's pretty exciting to do. But then there's like this other version of that where I wrote a draft of a manuscript. I wrote it in public as much as possible, and what I mean by that is that I set up a virtual performance called Watch Me Trust Myself, and I wasn't physically on stage, but I sold access to a Google document so that people could watch me write this thing, and sometimes I was alone in the document and sometimes I wasn't, but the idea that the audience could come into that studio space at any time was the best feeling. It was like the absolute best feeling because it was both private and public at the same time. And because I could see when you can see when somebody's entering the document and not. I really loved that. And then there's other version of it where we're maybe in a nod a little bit to writing or transcribing the poem and leaving it in the folder. When you said that, Andrés, I was thinking of how good it feels for me to return to work that I haven't read in a long time and haven't practiced in a long time, and trust my relationship to that page and to that work, and to bring it on stage to a reading, and kind of confront myself with a new relationship. Maybe it's a year and a half. So I'm really just talking about reading old work, but the key is to not practice it before, on the way to reading the day before, because then it's as surprising to me as possible, and it makes me think of the electricity of the stakes of reading something, or writing or reading something, knowing that there's an audience, either digital or in the room with you. It has the same kind of hum of those stakes of just I don't remember what this work is, but I trust myself that. I trust my old self and my current self that we're going to want to say these words out loud still, and they feel, and so it feels new again sometimes. Oh, wow, okay, it feels new again sometimes, and I'm so interested in this question of how do you transcribe what came to you audio. That's so interesting, and I have in part of my practice an orientation towards either performing the revision because I'm writing in front of somebody, or allowing space for revision in the performance, which is less exciting than the other things I was talking about, but it reminded me of that reminded me of that. That act of transcription, this kind of like invisible, like a little bit of a space of the invisible, an invisible aspect of transcription, or transcribing from the invisible, or something like that. Yeah.
I write my poems without longhand. I only use one kind of pen, the Pilot G2. I prefer this violet color. Right. Sponsoring a poet, that seems like full errand. Right. But if you want, I stand myself. I think that the technology that is most salient for my poems is femscience. And in addition to that, I think that the other technology is magic. The poem that I most attached, so the poems that I like best in my book have not been published anywhere, and it's like, it breaks my heart. Like, actually, the poems that like I think are best of mine have found all this acceptance, and I wonder like what that means. Like, do I like misestimate my own like skill? Like, do I am I like misunderstanding like where these poems should be? Like, et cetera, et cetera. But the main poem of mine that is true of is a poem, a coronative sonnets I wrote to reverse a spell that I had, a love spell that I had enacted 10 years ago today. Yes, 10 years ago today. And so I had to it took me 8 years to throw off this. It wasn't a curse, but it was a magical backlash that came on myself for deploying magic in a way that was unethical, and so it is both an apologia and a spell, and it worked really well. It worked very well. And the secondary spell that I had cast, or really the work that I had done. I've been thinking about when I say spell work, I think of things that are written down. Whereas when I say just work, generally I mean things cooked up, things created for help. Jobs that one might do. But in this case, it needed both work, right? And so work outside of the page, and also for me to write something, and then to recite it everywhere. And that is how I reversed that pattern in my life. And I think that my cosmology, which is also an inherited cosmology, so my family also works in the same tradition, and it is taught traditionally. So, and then I think one of the most important practices in my life is my practice of mediumship and sortilege. So I've been reading cards since I was 12 or 13, and I'm in my summer turn now, so I've been learning how to use playing cards instead, because tarot comes from my white ancestors, right? It is a European technology, and in the context of America, is colonial, and I think should be thought of as imperialistic and colonial, in addition to being helpful. Or else, why are we talking about empresses and emperors? Why are we talking about kings and queens, pages, and people becoming suddenly poor and falling out of their homes and castles? Right, it's nakedly colonial, so I can't understand how this woo moment has sucked up tarot as though it's a liberation technology inherently. It can be, but it's not inherently that. But in Buddha tradition, people read playing cards, and playing cards, I feel you understand the difference between the whiteness of tarot against the blackness of playing cards, because in tarot you're supposed to never predict someone's death, you know what I mean? But there's whole systems of playing cards that just be you gonna die, you keep doing that, I'll kill you today. And so I feel it's just it really is tarot talks white people often do, and playing cards talk black people. They will be you better leave that person, you need to move on with your life, or I see that you drink all the time, that's very playing cards are really very to the point. So thinking about the ways that mediumship and sortilege and divination make their way into my poems are it's really important to me. And in some ways the poem that I'm talking about, Viola Morningstar and Andromalius and Barakato Penmule Ronan and Nzinga. I don't know why I gave it that long ass name, but I did. I feel it is, other than a machine of mahogany and bronze, which is one that's sold from two perspectives, it really is the center of the book, because I think that it is work that like questions like what it means to love someone, like whether platonic, like or parent-child, but what it means for like people who are told systemically that they are not deserving of love and that the state will like crush any attempt they have to love each other. If they recognize that it's existing at all, like what it means for us to try to love each other anyway and not do that well, and like do it manically, frantically, disappointingly, violently, like just all of the different like fucked up ways trans people specifically, but like people more generally are offered love and like how we can like try to optimize like whatever crumbs we can grab of love and like think of like how we can create more abundance for ourselves is like really at the core of the work. And so that is an act of speculation, right? Like that is speculative fiction, and also that is magic, right? Like it is magical realism. And so I think pretty strongly that even though like I can't write on the phone because like the lines are just too short, and the line breaks, like I just feel like it forces a line break. Like there's like, because the iPhone, you know, like the screen's only so big, so I feel like technology can be really coercive on my poems, like where it's just like, why am I writing in couplets? Like, oh, because like I can't do the things that I want here, and there's no indent button, and like I can't like, you know, like I don't know how big this Cyrée is, you know, like I can't really estimate in the digital landscape unless like I enforce something in writing first, and that is like comes more from my spiritual practice than it does from. It is something that my spiritual practice imposed on my poetry, not something that, you know, it doesn't have to go.
Yeah, again, all of y'all's answers have been shatteringly broken apart. Maybe not shatteringly, maybe it should be a less violent word. Yikes. Just in the interest of time, I think we have time for one or two more questions, and then we're open to questions from the audience or questions from y'all if you have ones for each other that you haven't asked yet. Cyrée, I guess this is going to sort of try and suture two, much as Crystal did, suture two different questions together. When you were talking about love, it immediately caused me to think about like the complexity of love as resistance, right? What are the ways that love can be sort of an anti-colonial tool? What's the ways that like love or the illusion of love is used to justify coloniality? I'm also thinking of like Sheila Sandoval, who popularized this concept in her book Methodologies of the Oppressed, which is brilliant. If y'all haven't checked it out, please do. So it's sort of thinking about love as this like type of resistance. And there's like this distinction that she doesn't quite make in the book, but like it's like lurking below the surface, right? That there's like a very specific type of love that she's talking about. And I'm curious, what are the ways in which, going back to a conversation we were having before we started recording, right? What are ways in which love or care work, to quote, I'm short manifesto, Magenta, Lakshmi, Yosta Samarasina. What are like the ways in which you articulate care in your work? Is that something that you're interested in doing? How do you build through love and resistance? And then I think I might just ask the follow-up question after y'all are done answering that one. And then maybe go to Crystal for the last question.
Specifically, can you say just the end of that question again? Specifically, can you say what you said after care work?
Okay, yes. So how is, what role does love or care, let me just rephrase that whole question. How do you negotiate the tensions between love and care as the tensions between love and care, firstly, and secondly, the tensions between love and care as an ameliorative act, as a rehabilitative act, and then love and care as something that perhaps allows types of oppression, types of violence to perhaps perpetuate because it has this scrim of everything's fine, look at what's going on. Is that a little bit clearer?
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. And I'm a Pisces, and my Venus is in Pisces, so like I really like it. I really, really like it. Oh goodness, I think that my poetry is best suited for talking about like complex things, right? And so like there's this way that people have been saying, I neither agree nor disagree that like the idea of monogamy treats love as though it is scarce and like finite or whatever. And I guess like one of the things that I've been holding in my poetry specifically, and also the things that have shaped the poetry, is that like love may not be finite, but time is super finite. And like as like I really do not have a lot of time, and like so thinking about like what ethical, like holding multiple love ethics at once. I come from a family who can work a love route, you know, like who can really like work one. But like the bad part about that is that like not only do you impede or have the potential to impede someone else's free will, you also have the potential to impede your own happiness, which is the thing about being good at working a love route. Is that you don't really know what you want, because no one does, for real, or maybe Capricorns do, I don't, and all the time, and so you really, like, and that is the reason why I wrote the poem. Yeah, I think that queer people in specific really love romance, you know, like about love, like where it's just like everyone is inherently lovable. But also, I only date people under 90 pounds, so, you know, like, even though you're lovable, I won't be loving you. You know? Like, it's just like, I love all black people, especially if they have curly, loose hair, if it's curly and loose, and maybe some freckles. Yes, I love all black people, right? So, like, and like, but no, that's really how people be, you know, like, they just, like, look you in your face, and they say this slogan, and that's, you know, like, that is what it is, you know, like, where it's just like, or, like, get really into, like, you know, like not saying disabled or whatever, but it's like you'd never be with a disabled person. Like you just straight couldn't, like you would never, ever do it. And so, you know, I really, as an autistic person, as a black and white thinker, that shit's really hard for me. Like where it's like, but I saw you say this. You said it, but you don't do it. Like that kind of stuff. It really breaks me apart. Like probably nothing else. Like when people like get in my face saying like, oh, you know, I'm anti-racist. Like I want disabled people to succeed. Like it really, like there's nothing that tears me up like that. Because like, how can you get so much power telling such a big lie? But that's how people get power, right? Like telling big lies, and then like people who are like out there keeping it 100, like never get to have power, or very often don't get to have power. And so I feel like I'm gonna ramble if I just don't say the poem. Can I just say the poem? Okay, I'm so sorry that I've been responding to the poems, but it's the first time I've ever had the option to. So like I said before, this poem is. And you know, like if you're someone who is like innately affected by like a love work, like some love work you've done, like I hope that this poem will take you off of you too, because like this really did. Like this poem, like once I finished writing it, like it really, the work had done itself. Like it took 8 years for the work to start doing itself, and this poem was the cap on that. So if you're coming from like some negative love work that you did on yourself, like I really hope that your mileage does not vary, that you get the same mileage that I did. So actually, it's a poem about the devil's polycule. So like when Lucifer fell, like he took all his boyfriends with him, and they became the fallen angels. And so this poem is named after them. It's called Belial and Morningstar and Angel Malleus and Barakajal and Penamil and Ronob and Nzinga. Everybody knows I know a secret. I stared at windows until hands poked through, and I nursed men left on my doorstep with stern, unsure nipples like frayed tissue. We learned we could never go home, at least not without making pistols of ourselves. I was made to jaw on your fennel stalk. We were made and raised to raise the fallen and lift them high by their turgid taproots. Everyone's heard I saw 2 king snakes fuck. Everybody knows I know who gets more pleasure. The pleasure arrives for the taker who takes cacophonously, superfluously, the yes please fuck. The no go home finish, the yes please fuck finish, so run home on the white bus crowded by need. Your mama wonders who's been over, says it was a black, she can smell it. Must have been that blue magic smeared over your pillowcase, my head shaped, dented and scented and haunting your fingertips. Anyone but a black she thinks. Someone pretty and black, my mother hopes. In this scene, no one gets what they have wanted. In this scene, you ask to use penis and pee. In this scene, you fly me to Arizona, 4 stained fingers, twist, twist inside, push, push. In every mirror, you find a demon, 4 stained fingers, twist, twist inside, push, push. In this house, there is no God but Downing. In this apartment, we take rent and ribbing. In this hovel, you flash your dick on path trains. In this shack, I suck you deep on the pier. In this delusion, you kiss me in public. In this delusion, I meet your parents. In this delusion, we have soft babies. In this delusion, you keep a steady job. You are hard work. You are rude labor. You are the original sin in house paint and the tripod upon which the Pythia sat. And words repel you, and my tongue does not, and you become sentient and escape and shrink back into the Gordian knot. You oxcart king. You spiked silver cellar turned gold stroker in the fire and tar woods behind my house, framed in white flame. Antlers draped in tiny lights we learned were beetles. You did it. I let you, and you did it. Blood magic and Hennessy, I'm sorry. You must know, I promise you I paid and paid and paid with 8 years of no good dick, with violence. Blood magic and Hennessy, I'm sorry. You must know I loved you and lose. First I puke on you, then watch you fold drawers, little squares of black and red hook houses. Daddy, I look for you in other faces, changed by years of no good dick and violence. In this scene, I Google penis envy, my stern, unshorn nipples like framed tissue. Daddy, I look for you in other faces, 4 stained fingers, twist, twist inside, push, push. You must know that I loved you and lose. Blood magic and Hennessy. I'm sorry. In this hovel, you flash your dick on path trains, changed by years of no goodness and violence. In this delusion, I meet your parents, have soft babies who keep a steady job. Behind our house, framed in white flame, antlers draped in tiny lights we learned were beetles. Everyone's heard I saw 2 king snakes fuck. Everybody knows I know a secret. In this particular side. That's the front of it. I forgot there's one else.
Yeah, I just want to the tension between love and care, I think the reason why I couldn't quite hear your question before is that it's such a profound move for me that my brain short circuits a little bit. When I think about that question, and one of the things I think about the most is how many people how casually people will say, "Oh my God, I love you, I love you, I love you," and then the kind of shattering isolation that is the truth of their love, because their love is really casual, right? And I think that as I get older, as things have been harder for me for longer, I have sought out different kinds of help and kind of finally receiving different valences of help, and I'm really starting to feel what it looks like when somebody loves you, and it's like startling. It's startling, and also heartbreaking to see how different that is than all of this other attention that was coming forward. And so I'm really, I feel very wary of the word love in this pairing with the word care, because I think that care is a lot less cultural bullshit around it. I think it's clear. I think it's clearer to people that care comes from, that care is specifically around a wound or to prevent a wound. And in the way that we're all vulnerable, most of us wounded, I would say all of us wounded levels, I'm much more kind of romantically, sexually interested in people who show that capacity for care. Like, that's hot. That's hot. And then love is, I don't know, I feel really casually about it too sometimes. You know, I'm currently trying to figure out what it means to be, you know, falling in love with somebody's thought process and mind, and if that means that I want to make out with them. You know? It doesn't always, but it certainly feels like it. You know, so I'm currently figuring that out. But so love, I'm really annoyed with that word, but care is very, very, very interesting to me, and feels much more ready to be done and received with honor and ability. Whereas love, I think, I feel like we messed it up. And there's a long poem that I've been working on there's a poem that I intend to write over the course of my life. I wrote most of what's in this anthology, Letters to the Future, Black Women, Radical Writing from Core Press, or Core Press. Most of what's in here I wrote in 2015 and 2016. But I'll read two segments that are about a romantic relationship where I realized the limits of care. Six. This is from Floral Biography, part 6. We stood indoors nearby the curtain, and my human lover complained about its deficits. It was failing in his care. It was failing in his home. It was failing at his hand. My human lover did not know what it needed. My human lover was able to care well for many plants, an attractive quality. My human lover was not able to care for this plant. My human lover needed the croton's care to be discernible. And my human lover did no research, yet framed his failure as the croton's. I scolded the human. I told him this flora would not abide such petulance. I told him he was the problem, that no beauty would reward this so-called care. We humans laughed in the truth and ease of this corrected moment. I brought the plant to my house and named it Glisson. I asked the Rastafarian selling crotons beside my human lover's subway stop how to care for this being. He told me, and I made sure I understood. Glisson thrived in my home while I did. And when in autumn I began to fail myself anew, so too did Glisson suffer. A fungus flourished within us both. I survived the deliverance, but in my convalescence, let deep neglects befall this crew. "17. Newly homeless and running a fever of 104.5. I lay on the futon in my lover's guest room, wailing beside him, so frightened, so abject, and so tenderly cared for that I remembered I'd left Renee, Lisson, and Tyrone alone together in the dark of my new storage unit, and understood with a ghastly wrenching how alive these things I delighted in. How terrifying love, how real life, how tenuous. The seedling of a new self had begun breaking through the old. A seedling of a new self had begun breaking through the earth of old. Toward my heartbreaking mother, toward my baffling father, toward the overwhelming and essential suddenly of love. Love. "21. The unnamed white man's footprint is dead. So too some unlucky bamboo. Chiwetel is long gone, and Shaquille is close to the brink. Care is not a game."
As long as you have that's not very long. Yeah, I'm really blown away. I think that, well, speaking, I think about how the expectations of love are extremely gendered, and how tense that is, and how it's passed down in different ways. I'm going to read a poem called Fear of Intimacy. And I think that sort of the background that needs to be set around it is that my parents were very much in love. Were very much in love. My mom, my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's at 44. He died at 60. And my mother cared for him, intensely, and was intensely in love with him. And I mean, it was like a beautiful model of love and that idea of care. But it's also frightening. And I think also my father, being that, he had Parkinson's, he didn't have control over his body and the things that were happening to him, and therefore, by extension, it happened to their relationship, he felt immensely bad. When he had psychological breaks, he would refer to himself as a Judas, in a certain sense. So I'm going to read Fear of Intimacy. I don't have a table of contents in my book, so I want everyone to read it from the first page to the last, but it also brings up some problems. Fear of Intimacy. When my father tried to kill himself the first time, he ripped a telephone wire from the wall of his hospital bedroom. The next time, it was a bed sheet. A nurse stopped him. In his pockets were pencil notes, confessions for crimes he did not commit, but felt must have been the crimes of his punishment As the days continued, the list grew like kilo scars from the DBS. When I'd visit, he'd ask, was it in the papers? When I'd leave, he'd say, don't come back. His mind, the same sentences like a vinyl skip, the way they widened, trailed, and returned. As he kissed my mother in the ward's cafeteria, he whispered, I am Judas. When my father's mind became the small wheel in my chest, I didn't want to love anyone I didn't already love, and those I loved I hid from. I broke up with my girlfriend, smoked outside Beth Israel, and took the long way home. At the end of each avenue, everyone who was left I watched as if they were on the horizon and could break at any moment. Then what? I'd have to wade in, find the fragments, and clear my already empty studio, wait into the shadow of something half-finished and continue. The currency of love is self-sacrifice.
Thank you so much for that. So, actually, given that everyone read a poem, that we started reading a poem, I think this makes a pretty natural transition. I'd like to, I think we have time for about one or two, or maybe three if you're quick, audience questions or panelist questions. I guess
thank you. There's so much kind of being invoked in the space. And thank you for this weekend event for extroverts, so we can't be outside marching and revelry with a whole bunch of people. It's like a spot, so I really appreciate it. And also the generosity. So vulnerable and so generous at the beginning. It was allowed some energies to move through space and need to be invoked and spoken, and that happens because of also the facilitation. So thank you to the moderators for their care. I had a question for you, okay, in terms of thinking about plants. Because my mother is a caretaker of plants. I have a little orchid that's named after Eleanor, so the naming of the plant is something that is of importance. And I've been thinking a lot about the climate crisis in relation to plant life and the way in which it's almost language through, especially through a white supremacist lens, is like this sort of dystopia, as if dystopia has come for people long before, and how much the concern about climate change centers the human, which is something Zefyr and I have talked about, is how invested are we really in a planet that doesn't actually need us? Yeah. We need it. And so in your work, in your poetry, and your communication with plant life, is this sort of, I don't know, I don't feel as terrified, and I feel kind of guilty for not, being like terrified about it, because I just wonder what it would mean to center the decentering of humanness within the context of what we really would be intending to save, if we were really intentional about it, and also thinking about the connection of Black femme energy specifically as a sort of organizing principle that is not surprising the death of the planet, because it's directly proportional to how we treat Black people, particularly
black femme energy, and that's distinct from the body. That's the kind of energetic principle I'm talking about. So I just didn't know if you had any particular thoughts around that.
Those are my particular thoughts.
I mean, that's exactly where I'm at with it. I think forgive me, I'm sometimes speaking too glibly, and I'm about to, but I don't want to pretend that I'm thinking about this in a more complex way. I think this planet is getting rid of us because we're bad, And we had a long time, and we've been thinking a lot about what it means to be on the planet. And this is what we came up with. And this is whack. And I don't even like living here. I like the idea of what it could be, but sometimes I think about what this other animals and plants must be thinking of us. I'm so embarrassed, just this is absurd. This is absurd. That said, that's my big picture thinking. That's my kind of glib to big thinking. That's what kind of holds me together. But I listened to LeVar Burton has this podcast, LeVar Burton Reads. Oh my God, it's so good. And he had, I think last year, I forget the author's name, but the story is what it means when a man falls from the sky. And this is the first fiction narrative I had come across that is talking about this planet after the waters have risen and some cities are buried and some cities are not. And it's, the world has been reformed. The world has been reformed. And I listened to that story maybe 3 or 4 times. It's about 30 minutes or 40 minutes. And it's really frightening, but it's also really relaxing, It's really relaxing to think about the world. It's not the world without us, because there are humans in that story, but one of the things I think about that I want next for my ethnobotanical literary practice is to move from investigating this relationship between the plants that we bring into our home or the plants that we arrange in our cities, and think about what kind of what can I do as a human being to encourage plant life to take over? Because I don't know. I forget exactly the word I want to say here, but just harkening back to the kind of solidarity with the asterisk question from the very beginning of our interaction. I don't know if that's what the plants want, but I think that's as the transition, as we maybe leave this place, what might New York City, because that's where I'm from, what might New York City look like in its next stages? And it's just green. It's just green to me, No one, not even the rich people can afford to live, wherever anymore. It flooded anyway, like there's this swampland, there's this, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what it will actually take, and I am not pretending, I don't want to pretend that I don't have any grief about that, and that I would be smiling as it happens, because if I live as long as I want to live, the last 30 years of my life are going to be rough. Like 2050 to 2080 is going to be weird here. But I don't feel good about us as a species, and I think that rather than like wringing our hands about climate change, it's more appropriate to be in the graceful exit zone.
So yeah, I think we have time for about one more question. Just because I want to make sure everyone is out of here before 5. If y'all want to go to a march or just head out, do that. Did you say that you had one? Or
they're just like forming thoughts. That they're like not even fully formed thoughts. No, but I am curious about the points made earlier about naming, the power in naming, like things that have just sort of like ideas that have come up that are kind of playing with my mind are the lie, the great lie, how powerful the great lie, and lying to survive, privacy, the privacy of, the DL has a lot, or not. So I guess I'm curious about there's so many things that are just racing through my mind. Okay, let me ground it with this. In Poetics of Space, Bachelard writes about populating the house with essences or spirits, right? Voices. Spivak, Gayatri Spivak ends up writing about how that goes to, how that's sort of like the colonial paradigm, right? To render a place depopulated so that you can then populate that space in specters. And so yeah, I'm just trying to think through some of these phrases, some of these thoughts that come up. Wanted to know more specifically about naming, right? Because the poet, in Bachelard's estimation, the poet names these things, and there's power there. So yeah, those are just sort of thoughts that I've been having. Especially given this conversation around care, and we haven't said it, but you're talking precarity, the precarity of life, right? So yeah, I would just love to hear you speak more about naming and yeah.
I'm interested in naming in the sense that, thinking about my own name, right? So my direct lineage, they all have biblical names. And so sometimes I think about what it meant for my mother to decide that my mother's name is Lamar, my great grandmother who raised me, his name is Ruth, and my grandma's name is Barbara. And so how they got to Cyrée just feels like what happened between this birth and my birth and my father's name has a embarrassingly boring name. And so thinking about what it means to decide, does the child decide? Do you I just wonder how names have to be. Naming a person, I feel it's their first trial. Do you accept the name? Do you reject the name? Do you use the name? How does the name color your experience on Earth? If you get a name that lots of people have, how do you think of yourself as similar or different to other people who share your name? All those things. Someone told me the other day that, one time I was walking down the street and I saw that somebody had my name tattooed on their bicep, and I was like, my baby son's name? And I was like, yeah, that's true, because there are other black Cyrees, you know? And Kyrie specifically. So, like, you know, like, like, we do exist, but, like, at the same time, like, whenever I, like, find proof of that, like, I'm always, like, bang, like, I'm angry. Never happy about it. That being said, I think that the naming of a person, like, you get those, like, challenges and the highlights. But I think when you name a concept, I feel like it can crush it. You know what I mean? I feel like that's always been, and also I think that you have to deny a lot in order to claim that you've labeled something definitively, right? And that's always been my, to the detriment of all the other things that it means. I feel like that's always been my beef with, like, queer. Like, obviously, like, I'm not a straight person. Like, I don't know that obviously is the word, but, like, obviously to me, like, it's just not. I've never been straight in the ways that I've just never been. So, I cannot speak as an expert there. But I can say that, like, to say that queer is only a radical term, right? Like, divorces the idea that, like, where we get queer in its modern, like, tutelage comes from William S. Burroughs, who, like, legitimately shot his wife in the face and never served any time for doing it, and said that without that act of violence against women, he could have never been a writer, right? So we would have never got queer had it not been for William S. Burroughs murdering his wife. And then at the same time, right, like, there's that, like, generational divide between, like, elders and ancestors, like, queer is a slur, me, really feel like it's a slur. And, like, young folks being like, you're old and that means you don't matter. But, like, in my lifetime, like, people call me queer, slur. So, you know, like, I think that there's a way that people act like naming brings us closer to the truth. When I think that a lot of times, and, like, queer is, like, a broad umbrella too, I feel like sometimes it brings us farther from the truth. Because what we're talking about is, like, you know, shared oppression, right? If we're trying to make a solidarity term, like, we are not all equally oppressed under, like, queerness. And, like, I think that, like, our current debates about whether or not you can wear kink wear at Pride, what kind of question is that? You know, like, whether you could be, like, kinky in public during, like, gay weekends, the one weekend a week where you can, other than, like, fall summer or whatever, really just tells us that we don't all mean the same thing when we say queer. Like, that is, like, actually an empty signifier in those ways. And I think that naming, when we talk about concepts specifically, like, not entities, you know, like, because I think that, like, naming an entity is an act of kindness as much as it is an act of violence, because you can never really know what that entity believes its name is. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like, T.S. Eliot, like, goes and it, like, makes me sad sometimes because he's, like, one of those poets that gets stuffed down your throat sometimes. But, like, you know, like, old possums, it goes, you know, like, it's good, it slaps. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, he's right. Like, the naming of cats, like, they have a bunch of names. Like, you can give a cat whatever name you want, but, like, at the end of the day, like, you can't really know, like, what something calls itself. But with concepts, I feel like there's really a lot of danger because, like, well, what part of the thing about Slingshot 2 is that, like, both of the characters are queer, right? Like, so the mother, the son, like, everybody's queer. And, like, I think that one of the things is just, like, a lot of times people flatten the nuance out of people who are living, like, very particular lives, like, you know, like, very radical existences because they choose not to highlight it with the same language. Like, this, like, Lady Gaga thing that's happening this weekend. Did we all hear the news about Lady Gaga? Yeah, because you're on Twitter, right? I see the Twitter now. Yeah, so, like, Lady Gaga was essentially like, I'm bi, and, like, I know that I don't, like, face the same as all the other queer, like, lots of other queer people, but, like, I really support y'all and stuff. Like, it's kind of disidentifying yourself from queerness. But it's just like, Lady Gaga's out here being bi all day, so, like, really, like, well, then what does it mean? Like, who is it for? Like, who are these terms meant to support? Like, who has access? And, like, when do we reward, like, for instance, like, a queer life lived, or, like, other people's expressions of, like, transness, like, without that, like, name or terminology, but with equal dysphoria. Like, how do we, like, when did the naming become more important than the living? You know, like, I feel like at this point the naming has become more important than the actual life lived. And that's what worries me about naming concepts, because, like, there were so many, like, before we ever had any kind of term, like, there were so many different people out here just doing the same things. So, like, I feel like sometimes the term even, like, flattens it, because there's, like, an idea of, like, one standard way that you can evidence this identity, and there's just, like, there's, like, a culturally approved one, and then, like, other subcultural ones, and then there's even more that, like, cannot possibly be named as such. And I worry that, especially in this moment, and not even, like, millennials, even though I know that we ruined everything, you know, like, post-millennials, like, there's this impulse to name everything. Like, there's an impulse to name everything, and then give everything a flag, and then, like, make sure that, like, we're writing about everyone, and, like, making the acronym longer and longer, which I understand the impulse, you know what I mean? Especially as, like, a non-binary person specifically, like, I get it. But additionally, like, it's just, like,
what do you believe that will help? You know what I mean? Like naming things for naming things sake, I feel like it's useless. And also like liberal in the worst way kind of impulse.
I think that specifically I'm thinking about like Latinx identity and how sometimes like this idea of naming allows for the perpetuation of violences against the supposed thing that unifies you, right? So like anti-blackness in the Latinx community or whatever unique community, right? That is something that therefore allows for more of that to happen, and that scares me, and I become more and more wary of it. That's all.
I want to add something. I mean, I feel like I've spoken to this a little bit, but let's add something to open it out a little bit. When I'm the space between like having woken up and you have a dream, like a dream from your sleep in your mind, and you're having breakfast, whatever you're doing, and you are recalling that dream without any language, right? There's that, and you know what it is, like you have the record in your mind, and then maybe you want to write it down, or maybe you want to tell someone, and when you talk about the flattening of a concept by the naming, I so hear what you're saying in our very political landscapes and our communication with each other, and it really makes me think of, or one of the things it makes me think of is how porous and accurate that remembered dream is before you assign it language that cannot contain it. They cannot contain it at all. And so that's a naming thing that I think of. And yet, you want to remember your dreams, or you want to tell your friend your dreams. And so sometimes and we want to refer to somebody's lifestyle, in 30 seconds rather than 2 hours. We want to be able, we need to communicate, and yet we know that we are limiting representation sometimes. And so that's just what I wanted to add about the naming. Like, calling a plant Shaquille is a fast reference for a culture where we name beings that we bring into the home, and beings that we create with other humans. But I really mean it as, no, not that shamrock, this one, the one that lived in my house for this time to this time, had this problem and I fixed it, had this problem and I didn't know about it, had this beautiful fertile period, and then also had me, an imperfect caretaker who let it die. Like, that's what I mean when I say Shaquille. I mean that history of that particular shamrock bush, right? And I don't know. You said something way back about whether or not plants, call themselves anything, and it always makes me excited to think that if there was any possibility of communication, that they might roll their eyes and just be like, you don't need to name us, we know each other through these other things, or actually we're not individuals, you guys are so silly, something like that.
Yeah, okay. Just please. I just wonder why we need to be able to name someone's lifestyles or behaviors in less than 30 minutes. Why do we? Because I feel if we're talking about the ins and outs of the way that people live in the world, we can never get a handle on that with 1 or two-word answer. And if we want to talk about people's actual experiences of like oppression and marginalizations, we definitely can't talk about that. It's like we just can't, you know, like that's like about behaviors and like proximity to like violence and like oppressive social systems. Like we could never ever like get a handle, I feel like, on like what people mean by the name that they say in less than a couple of hours. You know what I mean? And so like I feel like it's like that really corny game that you play sometimes in college, like step up, step back. You know what I mean? Where like I'll all stand in a line and then it's like take a step forward if you're the first one to go to college. Take a step back if you
like getting to know you.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so like I feel like that is like a series of those questions is like the only way in my mind to like scratch the surface. Because like you could be like a queer person who like is only interested in dating millionaires or something, you know what I mean? Or like, which some people, and like the gag of it is that like people out here really are, you know what I mean? Like people out here with trust funds like literally dating and marrying millionaires. Like it's not unheard of. Like Buttigieg is like really opening up the queer possibilities. I feel like Chasten might be like the first man who has like a trans guy name. Like what's up? I just don't understand why his name is Chasten. But or Chasten, sorry, excuse me. But I just think that we want to get off the hook too easily when we ask people to say something salient about their identities or lived experiences quickly by using these identity handles, because like we just couldn't. Like even after Kevin Killian died and Donnie Bellamy like wrote about their like white marriage or whatever, where it was just like, no, actually we loved each other, we had sex, we had a nice time, he was gay and I was maybe like kind of a lesbian, and like we had a wonderful time and loved each other and respected each other greatly. You know, like you can't really like you need a whole piece to like talk about like what your life was really like and what set of oppressions like made your, and like also what set of oppressions like made his life what it was. You know, like it's just like we can't do this quickly, and like even as someone who like really appreciates like digital tools, especially as a disabled person, like it's like my primary form of socialization in the week. I worry about how quickly people want things to be resolved, and like that's unrealistic. That we're gonna like resolve these things in a matter of years that have plagued our ancestors for hundreds. You know, like it's just, and I feel the same way about naming. You know what I mean? Like it's flattening because it like takes something that's temporal and relative and reduces it to something that is consistent in a way that just not. I feel like many people don't live that way. So, but I don't know.
All right, on that note, thank you all so much. It's been an honor, a privilege, etc., sharing space with all of y'all. And if anyone wants to talk for a few minutes afterwards, I know I'm going to run to the bathroom because I just had a 16-ounce cold brew and moderated an entire panel. Why did I do that? Thank you.
Please buy their book.
Right. So Cyrée's book coming out with Night Boat in the fall in September 17th, you said?
Yes, September 17th.
I know that Andrés' Bicycle in a Ransacked City in Elegy is out with Alice James Books now. I've seen it in several bookstores if you live in Brooklyn. If not, it might also be in a bookstore. I don't know what it's like out there. And I know you're in Letters to the Future.
For a press.
Mm-hmm. And you have a Belladonna chapbook too, right? Is that still in print? Or?
I do. Yes. Belladonna chaplet, I think it's number 215, called Close Reading as Forestry. Still available.
Great. Thank you, everyone.